Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to set the stage for a deep dive into the absolutely massive, sweeping evolution of the live music industry. We're going to explore exactly how a business, one originally built by really passionate local music lovers, transformed into a landscape entirely dominated by multi-billion-dollar corporate giants. Look, if you love live music, the information we're covering today literally affects every single show you attend.
So let's start with a frustration I know we all share. Why does buying a concert ticket today feel so much harder, way more stressful, and frankly exponentially more expensive than ever before? You've probably experienced the anxiety of sitting in those virtual waiting rooms, watching ticket prices surge in real time, or getting hit with surprise hidden fees right at checkout. Well, it turns out this isn't just bad luck. It's a systemic shift in how the entire live music ecosystem operates, and recent ticketing fiascos have really brought this to light, leaving fans completely exhausted.
Okay, let's dive into this. The UK live music industry alone generated a staggering £6.68 billion in consumer spend in 2024. I mean, that is an enormous amount of money flowing into the sector. Yet, despite this record-breaking revenue, we're simultaneously seeing fans completely priced out of arenas, while small, grassroots artists are barely struggling to make enough profit to survive. There's this massive, glaring disconnect between the wealth being generated and the people who are actually making and enjoying the music. To really understand this disconnect, we have to look at the modern ticketing crisis. At the end of 2024, literally hundreds of fans lodged official complaints over the Oasis reunion tour, specifically regarding the incredibly controversial use of dynamic pricing. And right before that, we saw massive sales fiascos during Taylor Swift's Eras tour. This public uproar was so intense, it actually prompted the UK Competition and Markets Authority, the CMA, to launch an investigation into Ticketmaster in September of 2024. They found that the platform had misled consumers with unclear pricing practices, which actually forced Ticketmaster to commit to changing their methods. But it makes you wonder, how did we even get to a point where one platform holds so much power over the fan experience?
Section 1. Golden Age of Promoters.
Believe it or not, the live music industry wasn't always a corporate machine. It was originally built by highly passionate, independent individuals who loved the music just as much as the fans did. Let's look at two legendary promoters from this era. In the UK, you had Harvey Goldsmith. He was the mastermind behind monumental, culturally unifying events like the 1985 Live Aid concert, and famously promoted Bob Dylan at Blackbush in front of 175,000 fans. Over in the US, you had Bill Graham, who basically launched the careers of countless rock legends at the Fillmore Auditorium and spearheaded the 1988 Human Rights Now tour. These were independent operators pulling off massive, historic feats on their own terms.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how perfectly this 1965 news release from the Skirball Cultural Center captures the grassroots ethos of that era. Graham famously used to greet fans right at the entrance to the Fillmore with a fresh apple barrel. His very first show in 1965, it was just a humble fundraiser to support the legal defensive actors in the San Francisco mime troupe. The whole scene was highly localized, driven by the community, and deeply, deeply personal.
Back in this era, the promoter's only job was the show itself. It was a highly fragmented and super competitive market. Promoters typically took a very modest 3 to 4% cut of the gross revenue. And because they didn't own the venues or the ticketing companies, their focus remained exactly where it should be, entirely on delivering a great experience for the fans and fairly supporting the artists.
Section 2. The birth of consolidation.
So as live music proved to be incredibly lucrative, that localized, competitive music scene suddenly became the prime target for massive corporate buyouts in the 1990s. The main architect of this shift was an entrepreneur named Robert F.X. Sillerman, along with his company SFX Entertainment. He essentially took the super aggressive consolidation strategy he'd used in the radio industry and just unleashed it on live music. Look at this timeline. In 1996, SFX buys New York promoter Delsner Slater for $20 million. By 1997, they go on a $230 million spree acquiring legendary companies, including Bill Graham Presents. By 1998, they claimed control of over 40% of the U.S. concert market, and by 1999, they were buying up promoters all across Europe. Sillerman was just rolling up independent promoters nationwide to create an absolute live event empire.
This crazy buyout spree was driven by a very specific business strategy that you might have heard of. It's called vertical integration. Basically, vertical integration happens when a single company takes ownership of multiple levels of a supply chain. So rather than just being the promoter, the goal was to own the promoter, plus the venue, the merchandise, and the ticketing platform. This is the exact strategy SFX initiated, and it's the exact playbook that today's corporate giants have totally perfected.
Section 3. The Vertical Integration Era.
Which brings us to the present day, where we can see the ultimate product of all this market consolidation. A recent UK Parliament report detailed the current state of competition, noting that Live Nation Entertainment was actually formed in 2010 through the mega merger of concert promoter Live Nation and ticketing giant Ticketmaster. This single, massive merger created the undisputed largest live entertainment company in the entire world.
Today, Live Nation operates as a tightly closed loop. They don't just promote the show. They represent the artist through their management arm. They route the tour through venues they own or control, like the Academy Music Group. They sell the tickets, both primary and secondary, through Ticketmaster, and they control major festivals. So from the artist's very first booking to the digital ticket scanned on your phone at the door, the fan and the artist are heavily incentivized and honestly often required to stay entirely within the Live Nation ecosystem. And the company is actually very open about this structure. In June of 2025, Phil Bodery, an executive president at Live Nation, told the UK Business and Trade Committee quite plainly, "We are vertically integrated. As are most of our competitors, we are very good at what we do." This is their primary defense of their market position. They essentially argue that their integrated structure is simply a result of them being highly effective at delivering live entertainment.
Section 4. The cost of monopoly.
And this brilliantly illustrates the exact problem independent operators and government regulators are pointing out. This closed loop comes with some severe consequences. According to data provided to the committee, out of 23.1 million primary tickets sold in the UK in 2025, Live Nation directly controlled 58% of them. When you add in their affiliate companies, that number jumps to an incredible 66% of the market. When one single entity controls 2/3 of the tickets, they possess immense power to set service fees and additional charges, effectively setting a baseline price that any smaller competitors are literally forced to match just to survive. The UK Parliament's third report identified some very specific alleged competition harms across multiple sectors. Let's break this down. In primary ticketing, they found evidence of long-term exclusive contracts that lock venues into using Ticketmaster. In secondary ticketing, resale activity is often strictly restricted to Ticketmaster's own platform. In promotion, there are allegations that Live Nation cross-subsidizes tour losses using those high ticket fees, which allows them to easily outbid independent promoters. And when it comes to venues and festivals, evidence suggests artists can face serious pressure, essentially being told that if they don't play Live Nation festivals, they won't get access to their prime venues. These all-in-one packages make it incredibly difficult for an independent promoter to even attempt to compete. Because of these practices, the UK Parliament Business and Trade Committee concluded that Live Nation meets all of the criteria for holding a dominant market position. In their official recommendation, they strongly urged the Competition and Markets Authority to launch a full, comprehensive market investigation by the end of 2026. They even went so far as to note that, if necessary, the CMA should use its powers to enforce remedies, which could potentially include actually breaking up the business to restore competition.
So the crucial point is that this is not just a localized issue. It is a full-blown global crisis. In May of 2024, the U.S. Department of Justice filed a major antitrust lawsuit against Live Nation and Ticketmaster. By April 2026, a U.S. federal jury found that Live Nation had illegally maintained a monopoly that harmed competition. Meanwhile, over in Europe, the Netherlands authority forced Ticketmaster to drop their mobile ticket resale restrictions, and a court in Austria outlawed their exclusive resale terms entirely. Make no mistake, regulators worldwide are really waking up to the effects of this massive consolidation.
Section 5. Saving Grassroots Live Music.
Beyond the intense legal battles and the corporate market shares, there is a deep emotional and cultural core to this issue, because the corporate dominance at the very top is having an absolutely devastating effect down at the bottom. The reality on the ground is that while giant arenas and stadiums are absolutely thriving, independent 500-capacity venues are being completely starved of talent. Exclusivity clauses and these all-in-one corporate touring packages suck rising talent into the corporate ecosystem incredibly early on in their careers. I mean, Live Nation even operates The Great Escape, which is a major festival specifically for emerging talent. When artists get locked into these corporate routes, local venues just get bypassed. The Parliament report even highlighted that in 2025, the city of Swansea failed to secure any major tours despite having huge demand simply because tours were routed exclusively through corporate-owned venues in neighboring cities. This creates a massive crisis for emerging artists who rely on these grassroots stages to learn their craft.
To combat this, a really vital solution has been proposed, and it's been fully supported by the UK Parliament. The idea is a voluntary £1 ticket levy added to arena and stadium shows.
Think about it. Just one single pound from a massive stadium ticket would be redistributed to subsidize those struggling grassroots venues. This industry-led levy has even been fully endorsed by the government as a much-needed lifeline.
However, the adoption of this levy has been highly uneven. Artists like Coldplay and Harry Styles have actively supported it, and independent promoters like SJM have robustly implemented it. Yet, the overall take-up for 2026 was only around 30%. Why? Because the market leader, Live Nation, has largely resisted implementing it across the board. Mark David, the CEO of the Music Venue Trust, stated it pretty bluntly. He said, "It will be a direct consequence of the overwhelmingly dominant force in the arena and stadium market deciding not to deliver a voluntary levy. That's your choice, Live Nation."
Which leaves us with a critical question to consider today. As the live music industry grows richer and more consolidated than at any point in its history, are we pricing out the very fans and grassroots artists who built this entire culture in the first place? When one closed ecosystem controls the artist, the venue, and the ticket, we really have to ask ourselves, who does the modern live music industry actually serve today? It's a fascinating and pressing issue, and for sure, one that regulators and fans alike are going to be watching incredibly closely in the coming years.